This evening's broadcast is brought to you by Home Guys Home Services. Hello, and thank you for joining this broadcast of Port Angeles News. I'm your host, Arthur Wojnowski. We begin this news broadcast with a quick stop at Queen of Angels, where they hosted a community event called Touch a Truck. They also held school tours.
We've got a Touch the Truck event, which is a community event for Queen of Angels School. And we've got a passport book that we're having people do a tour of the school. We've got activities out, and it's just a great community event for the day.
Okay, and who are some of the people we got going on here with you guys?
We've got our Sheriff's Department, our Police Department, and different agencies. We've got the County Road Department, Lakeside, the Fire Department, and Agnew Farms is out here, as well as the Olympic National Park, their fire department.
Their vehicles were also provided by Rundell Auto Mall, Olympic Disposal, and a few others. City Council member Michael Meredith was also noted as attending the event in his log truck. And now let's get trucking to another event that was also going on at City Pier. The event, Celebration of Science and Technologies. Jim Waddell presented Making Sense of Science, Understanding Science when Presented with Conflicting Information.
What I'd like to do is share a lot of my experiences in my years and years with the federal government and since I've retired on another project. And I think first though, it's, we talk about science, but what do we really mean by it? And so I'll just read you one of the many definitions, but they're all kind of similar. But basically, it's a good place to start and remember what we're talking about here. One of the great definitions I like is that science is a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions. And so there's a lot of stuff in that definition in terms of the wording and so forth. And one of the challenges that all of us have, even the science community, is the massive amount of information that you're trying to deal with, synthesize, integrate, make some conclusions about, and then press those forward to the public or a decision maker. And that's what I spent a lot of my career doing. When I was in the White House, I was dealing mostly with climate change, and the same with the National Science Foundation. And one of the challenges we had, even back in the late 80s, was we got all this research going on in this country, and it wasn't put together. No one understood what the cause and effect and end products of climate change research were. So one of the tasks I got was to integrate over $1 billion, which would be about $2 billion in today's dollars, of about across 11 federal agencies, and that was about 150 research projects. That took me 2 or 3 years to do actually, and it finally was done, and it basically served as the foundation for the Global Change Research Project's research agenda. But one of the, I had several people working on this for 2 or 3 years. So you can imagine the challenge for the general public to deal with this kind of stuff. And so, what is it that, we do? And I want to pass out, we've got a handout here, Janet, if you could pass some of these out, that helps us do a couple things. And first off is you got to be able to spot the bad science or the misleading science. Then you got to be able to spot the misleading conclusions sometimes about good science or the absence of science. And then you got to figure out a way to get into it all. How do you actually dig into all this information, the thousands and thousands of pages of government documents, and then what does that look like and how do you present it? I have to tell you, there's no silver bullet answer to this. This is not easy stuff. And the one thing you cannot ignore is the simple, what you learned in first and second grade is what? to read. And this is, I can't emphasize this enough. You have to read. And then when you're sick of reading, read some more. And then when you're sick of that, read again and again and again.
Thomas Lockheed presented Public Health Impacts of Climate Change.
And this is kind of our options come down to, the ideal is mitigation. And we actually do things to slow or reverse the process. We reduce our production of greenhouse gases. We get better at cleaning the atmosphere, taking carbon dioxide out of the air and sequestering it in different ways. And there's a lot of research in that area. There are efforts towards mitigation. Most people, I think most scientists would say, they're woefully inadequate. And in fact, the tipping point may have already occurred. So we are in for major climate changes, unprecedented and at least known human history, and are going to be playing out over the next century. And so adaptation is really where we need to focus a lot of efforts, and that is anticipating and preparing and adjusting for it. And this is the real distinctive human aspect. Our adaptability as a species is what really distinguishes us, and why we're a species that can live in deserts and the Arctic and all over the planet. So I think a lot of our hope lies in our adaptability.
Brittany Kilmer presented Spin Your Meter Backwards, the technology behind production of solar energy.
National American Board of Certified Electrical Practitioners, that's a mouthful, but it's solar accreditation, and it ensures that, again, that company has gone through training and testing to ensure that they're providing accurate and knowledgeable information about the systems that they are installing, making sure that their contractors are licensed. It doesn't hurt to get multiple estimates. Again, comparing production and warranty and power over time is where you really want to get to the nitty-gritty details. Comparing those products is really important. Again, doing your research even on the company is important. You want to partner with a company that's been around for a while and choose a solar module and manufacturer that has a great warranty and it's going to be around in 10, 20 years. So a big thing that we want to start out with is what is solar energy, and light is moving energy. There is different wavelengths in which the sun produces its light. So we've got visible light and infrared that reach the surface and heat us. UV rays are obviously absorbed in higher altitudes, and then there's extreme UV and soft X-ray, which are really above 60 miles above the Earth's surface. And how solar modules work, the sun releases photons, and when the photons hit the solar module, they knock electrons loose from the atoms and are able to conduct electrical current through those solar modules. So solar modules produce DC power, and we have to use an inverter, synchronous inverter, which detects the grid's voltage and frequency, and we're able to use that inverter to change the DC electricity produced from the solar modules into AC current to be used for the home. So these are some of the most common types of silicon that you'll see in the solar modules. Each company kind of has their own concoction of what they like to use. The sun power cells that we are really liking right now are monocrystalline silicon. Really high efficiency. We're able to really capture a lot of energy out of those modules.
And Paul Klensikoff presented Einstein's hair-raising history.
Sir Isaac Newton once had a quote when he was talking about having come up with a way to apply calculus to the motions of the planets and to see where the planets were going to go. He said, "If I have seen further than others, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants." And what he was referring to there was all the people who had done stuff ahead of him, and he was able to learn from them and then do a little bit more for them. So, this was the first shirt, and it's about celebrating science. Now, you probably want to know a little bit about me. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. The main thing you need to know, besides the fact that I'm not a snappy dresser, is that, trust me, I'm an engineer. What could possibly go wrong here? Now, we're now going to get on to the person that attracted your attention, which was not my name, it was Al Einstein. And one of his quotes is that imagination is more important than knowledge. And of course you've all seen this, and I'm sure many of you thought, well, I've got a great imagination. I don't need to learn a damn thing, I'll just use my imagination. And of course, what Einstein meant by that, and he clarified it and said, if you go and learn everything there is to know, if you don't have an imagination, you won't be able to figure out what new questions to ask and new places to go to expand our knowledge.
If you are interested in watching the full presentation, go to our YouTube page, search Port Angeles News in the search bar, scroll down to our page and click on the Videos tab. And now let's take a look at weather for our week. Sequim Mayor proclaimed May 13th through the 19th Police Week and May 15th through the 19th Peace Officer Memorial Week.
We'll read the proclamation, City of Sequim proclamation. Whereas the President of the United States and the Congress has designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week. And whereas the International Association of Chiefs of Police has declared law enforcement officer safety and wellness a top priority, and the IACP's Center for Officer Safety and Wellness promotes the importance of individual, agency, family, and community safety and wellness awareness. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the City of Sequim play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Sequim, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. Now therefore, as the mayor of the City of Sequim, I proclaim May 13 through 19, 2018 as Police Week, and May 15, 2018 as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and honor those peace officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or become disabled in the performance of duty. I also invite everyone to visit the Sequim Civic Center during the month of May to view the police exhibit created by the Police Department of Sequim. Witness my hand this day, Dennis Smith, Mayor of Sequim.
The mayor also proclaimed the month of April to be Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
The next proclamation has to do with the Recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I understand Becca Corby will be here to receive
I
that.
am. Oh, I got a fan. But I need one.
We all need one. Sequim proclamation recognizing April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment affects men, women, and children of all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds, and whereas every day men, women, and children suffer the pain and trauma of sexual assault, from verbal harassment and intimidation to molestation and rape, this crime occurs far too frequently, goes unreported far too often, and leaves long-lasting physical and emotional scars. And whereas about 2/3 of sexual assaults are committed by someone who is known to the victim, and the emotional and physical scars resulting from sexual violence are often severe and long-lasting. And whereas we must work together to educate our entire population about what can be done to prevent sexual assault, support survivors and their significant others, and to ensure that survivors are not re-victimized. And whereas With leadership, dedication, and encouragement, there is compelling evidence that we can be successful in reducing crimes against citizens through increased awareness and prevention, and by holding those who commit acts of violence accountable for their actions. And whereas this recognition will increase the awareness of sexual assault issues and encourage individuals to seek help from those agencies providing services to sexual assault victims. And whereas, although conversations have escalated with the Me Too movement and the disclosure of sexual assault against public figures and Hollywood icons, no one victim is more important than another. All voices should be and deserve to be heard so that we can increase awareness, take appropriate action, help victims, heal lives, and support one another to create a safer environment for all. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the City of Sequim hereby declares the month of April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month and calls upon all citizens of Sequim to speak out against sexual violence and to support community efforts to prevent and respond to these crimes. Signed this 23rd day of April 2018, Dennis Smith, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm Becca Corby, and I'm the Director of Healthy Families of Clallam County. And so, councilmen and women, and Mr. Mayor, and I got a board member here, so I have to be on my best behavior. Sean Madison has been sitting on our board for, I think, 2 weeks. You have another 10 years to go. No, not 5 years. You have another 10 to go. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm never the bearer of great news when I ask you to declare a month Domestic Violence Awareness Month or Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And the beautiful part of this is that the older I get, which is, we've been doing this for a long time, you and I together, I'm getting crankier and crankier and crankier because it's not going away. Did you hear me? It's not going away. Are you reading the paper? Are you seeing what's happening? Are you hearing what's happening? This is not going away. And the beautiful community of Sequim, Washington is far from immune. A lot of people move here because we live in a picture postcard, and it is beautiful. You peel away the layers, it's not so pretty. And I need you to know that, because I am a warrior. I love being a warrior. I'm one of the few women I know who truly embraces conflict. No, Sean, I don't chase it. It finds me. But I do embrace it because we need warriors on every level. My mother was a warrior, but she was extremely feminine and extremely Victorian, wore gloves to the grocery store, but she fought in her own way. She would tell me that was her way of being a warrior. I am inviting all of you to help end this. Sexual violence will never go away, just like we will never end homelessness. It is integrated into the fabric of humanity. But what we can do is become far less tolerant. I don't know if you've been reading about the net nanny that just happened. This is good stuff. This is exciting stuff. I wasn't allowed to be like there, but I got to be on call, so I felt like I had my fingers just a teeny bit in the crust of that pie. This is good stuff that's happening. I just spent a very long week in Portland at an incredible training that Chief Crane, I'm really hoping, that's one of the things I want to talk to you and Sean about, is that we get more law enforcement from this area to this training. And I learned more in that week than I've learned in the, I'd say, months prior, and I tend to be a sponge. It's invaluable. Please don't be quiet. You know someone being hurt, speak out. You think someone's being hurt, call me. Someone tells you they're being hurt, call the police. Don't be quiet. Please don't think about the consequences to yourself. Don't think about how, because you're telling on Uncle Mikey or Aunt Susie that they won't invite you to Thanksgiving. I don't give a hoot. I don't care if you never have turkey again. Don't go to their house. Don't support them. Support these children. The children are depending on us. It is in our charter as human beings that we afford children a safety net. We are their soft place to fall. When we give them no soft place to fall, they will merely fall and keep falling. That's just the reality of it. Our Children's Advocacy Center is seeing at On the average, 1.5 children to 2 children a week interviewed. Think of that per capita. And those, you figure for every one that reports, there are 10 to 25 who don't. So think what each one of those children represents. The national statistics are 1 in 4 girls will be hurt, 1 in 6 boys. Baloney. After 15 years of doing this, I'm saying 1 in 1.5 across the board. This is everywhere. It knows no socioeconomic boundaries. It knows no gender boundaries. It knows no faith boundaries. It knows no educational boundaries. It certainly knows no color boundaries. You're looking at a mother of 2 rape survivors. My oldest, the only one whose story I'm allowed to tell, was gang raped at 10. Come on. I don't know a single 10-year-old child who wakes up and says, boy, I hope I get raped this year. Man, that would be fun. I don't know a single parent of a child who gives birth to that child and the first time they hold that child at the hospital says, oh dear God, please let this child get raped someday. It doesn't happen that way. So stop it, help me stop it. You are quiet, you're part of the problem. You're not quiet, you're part of the solution. Don't let me find out you're part of the problem, because I'll wake you up. Thank you so much. Thank you for this. And I would like to take just a...
And finally, the SQUIM Council watched a presentation on Complete Streets application process.
So I'm going to turn it over to David Garlington. I want to just give a little bit of background though. We had talked previously, I think it was about a year ago, when the state put out a new grant program for Complete Streets. I got some inquiries from counselors on, hey, are we going to do a Complete Streets ordinance? And it's been our intention to do one. But as public works staff have gotten deeper into it, they've learned more. And so I'm going to turn it over. That's my lead in for David to explain where we are and what we're looking at doing at this point.
Yeah, maybe his operative word there, and thank you, Charlie, has been, I guess that's 2 words, but I went through a presentation a few months ago on Complete Streets, also put on by TIB, and there's some good things to the program, but there are some concerns that I had then, and those concerns stayed with me after the presentation from PRTPO. So let me explain what they might be and get your sense. So Complete Streets, the concept of Complete Streets is that what the projects are looking after every user of the street. You know, it's the bicyclists, it's the pedestrians, it's people in wheelchairs, it's people in scooters, it's the trucks, it's the cars. So trying to make a street work for everybody. Not necessarily though every street working for everybody. I think this was on. I wonder if the battery's died. Oh, did you do that? Okay. So okay. The idea of the Complete Streets is that they want you. They don't want you. They require you to have a Complete Streets ordinance. So after this meeting a few months ago, we came back and said, well, you know, there's some good things here, and you know, money is money. So we started putting something together, and what we wound up with is a resolution. It's really not an ordinance, because what they're asking you to do is to put together, here they got these 10 elements, and they're really a statement of policy and statement of what we think the city should be doing, how we should be treating our transportation projects. And it doesn't really fit an ordinance. One of the cities, I believe it's Camas down on the river, on the Columbia River, was one of the ones that they held up, that they did such a great job. But what they did is they put together a resolution, not an ordinance, and they can't get the money, and they chose not to turn that resolution into an ordinance. A lot of other cities put together very slapdash ordinances because they wanted the money. They get rated lower with a slapdash ordinance than they would with what TID thinks is a better ordinance. But it just wasn't working for me as to making this into an ordinance that we can look at and say, okay, is this project, are these people, because this is supposed to apply to private as well as public construction. So whatever entity is doing this transportation, are they following these criteria? Well, they're not criteria, they're policy, they're general statements. One of the beauties of Complete Streets, and by the way, Complete Streets is a concept that we embrace in doing our projects. We are always looking for the opportunity to make it work for everybody. And in fact, the Prairie Street application that we talked about, or that we just got, $1 million for Prairie Street, when we put that application together, we used that term, and we used that term a number of times, and that how this is going to work as a complete street. So the concept is a very good one. So some of the issues I've got with having that ordinance, though, is that it dictates how you do all of your projects, including maintenance projects. And I felt that it was quite restrictive, because some of these, can you advance that, please? Some of these measures, like, here's, okay, this is what a complete street looks like. Well, we can't do that everywhere, and what if our street doesn't look like that? Is it still a complete street? Because we say, well, we've done what we can, but it doesn't look like this. How much money are we gonna have to put into it? And every time we do maintenance on a street, are we now looking at what could be some pretty costly complete street elements? So I like the idea of having it, holding it to our heart is a great thing to do, but doing it as we can without the ordinance. So that was one of the problems. Can you ask that, please? And one of the great things about the whole concept of complete streets is that it's all context sensitive. You say to yourself, or I would ask, are these complete streets? There's no bike lanes, there's no this, there's no that, there's no sidewalk, there's, I don't know what they're doing for stormwater. But these could easily be considered complete streets because of the context sensitivity. You don't need all those things where you have 10 vehicles a day on a street, right? So it works to be walking down the middle of the street like that gentleman is. It works for the kid to be out there with his mom and his bike without a bike lane. But the problem is that the way that they want the ordinance put together is that we're trying to define what a complete street looks like. We recognize it's context sensitive, but we've got these drawings. That doesn't meet any of those drawings. So my concern is that we get wrapped up in doing perhaps more than we want to. Could you next slide, please? And just other, like here's a complete street. This is, they got their little certificate there. This is a complete street work plan. They got the money. Well, Washington Street and Sequim Avenue are never going to look like this. We have constraints, and we're never going to be able to make it look like this. Again, please. And here's another complete street with a really cool cable stay pedestrian bridge. You're not likely to see that in downtown Sequim anytime soon either. So my concern is that we get wrapped up in something that, and somebody else could point to us and say, well, you're not fulfilling your own ordinance by making all these streets look like this. We really can't enforce it in anybody else either, because we can't define what is a complete street and what isn't, because that street with no sidewalks could be one. So it becomes just a matter of opinion. So I think there's one more, Karen. And the final thing that bothered me is that this is just not an application to the Transportation Improvement Board. You have to be nominated. There's 9 entities that can nominate you. Every one of them has a different application process. You can go through one, or you can go through all 9. Some of them have more pull with the TIB than others, and are able to get you more money than with others. So it becomes a fairly tedious and time-taking process to get there, and you're never quite sure, what group you should be going with. So all of these reasons, I was thinking, well, geez, don't want to do this. So I didn't bring it up to council. Then we had the other presentation, and Jennifer saw that. So it's a great time to come to council and just to explain some of my concerns. The money that they're giving out was between $250,000 and $500,000. That's when they had a $7 million pot. As Jennifer said, they've increased the size of that pot. They're also really trying to encourage the Seattles and the Spokanes and the Tacomas and the Everetts to apply, which was not the case previously. It was all small towns, like Wenatchee and down. Maybe Vancouver fit in the mix. But TIB has said, yeah, if Seattle applies because they have bigger projects and they need to spend more money, they're going to get a bigger part of this. So now, on top of all the other issues, we're competing with these bigger cities, and I just felt that there were better avenues, better ways to spend staff time than doing this. Embrace the concept, but that's not necessarily the program that works for the city. So.
If you have any news you would like us to cover, you can contact us at info@portangeles-news.com or by going to our Facebook page at Port Angeles News. Thank you for watching this broadcast of Port Angeles News. This concludes our broadcast. Thank you, and until next time.